The first thing is, of course, everybody's got to have a patch. Make sure your name is spelled correctly. That's very important. And there we are walking out. I guess this was our second attempt on December 9th, and we were very optimistic, even though we had some pessimistic weather forecasts that we were going to go. Strapping in is not a trivial thing, and it was really nice to have some support to get us in there so that we could spend the next 3 hours lying on our backs. Here is Sonny Williams, who is worth a mention or two, because we went to take her up to the space station and bring Thomas Ryder home. You know, there's not much I could say about that whole thing, but wow. And there we are, finally getting on orbit as we're separating from the external tank. And boy, what a feeling it was, especially since we had 5 people that had not flown before, to get them up on orbit. That was just a real fantastic feeling.
And after a night of sleep, a hard night of sleep as you can imagine to take after an ascent like that, we had to inspect the shuttle's thermal protection system for any damage that might have been caused during ascent. Unfortunately, there wasn't any significant damage. And here we are going past the hatch. I think Jenny's going to wave at us. We were looking for damage that might have been caused by falling ice or foam. And then rendezvous on flight day 3. Here we are viewed from the station. And then 600 feet below the station, we did this somersault called the rendezvous pitch maneuver, so that the station crew could photograph the bottom of the shuttle that we couldn't have seen with the space shuttle's robot arm. This maneuver is sped up, as you can imagine, but it's still very impressive while you're doing it. And this is a beautiful view of the shuttle. There are the 3 main engines that took us most of the way to orbit. And now we're ready for the rendezvous itself, the final approach. There we are climbing up in front of station with the west coast of South America breezing by below us. And soon you'll see our view of the station through the centerline camera as we approached. A magnificent sight the station was. And here we are viewed from the station, coming in at night. The payload bay is illuminated there. And on the right through the window, you can see space station just touching. We have to touch it 3 centimeters a second, just over an inch a second, which is quite a challenge after climbing at 17,000 miles an hour towards station. Then we open the hatch and go inside to greet our hosts for 8 days aboard the International Space Station. Here we are. Alexander Kaleri and Thomas Reiter saying hello to us, and in the background, Michael Lopez Alegria. And of course, you can imagine the size of the smiles. We've been waiting for this, some of us, for 8 or 10 years.
And now we'd just like to take you on a little tour of the space shuttle. We're on the aft flight deck as we head down to the mid deck. What you'll be able to see is our lovely MS-2, Mr. Beamer, exercising on the ergometer, which to normal people is just a bicycle. There's a lot of stowage that we had underneath there. As we continue going straight back or aft of the shuttle, we're slowly passing through the external airlock. We have some very large baggage there. A lot of these pieces of hardware we actually had to transfer over to station. As we continue back further aft, we are now into Space Hab, And you can see it's a little messy back there because it's not a lot of room, and I basically had to play a game of Tetris with all the bags. You see it's early morning because that's Nick's sleeping bag. He hadn't folded it up, and if you look at me, you see I haven't combed my hair. So you know this was not a planned thing for me. Continuing on, we are now going through the hatch, which will lead us to the International Space Station. We're actually first going to the laboratory module, and the first thing you'll see is more bags of transfer. There was plenty of transfer on this flight. If you look closely, you also see Stunny working on the robotic workstation. As we go into the PMA, or the node, you'll see more and more stowage, and you see LA upside down. He's actually working on the computer. We're going to take a quick left turn and now pan you into the airlock. This is where Krister, Sunny, and Beamer, and along with Billy O, got ready for all the different EVAs or the spacewalks. This port here is really important because you see all the bags, and there's like a little inclination. So as you come flying through there, it's really fun. It's like going down a slide. We're continuing back, and we're now in the service module, and all the containers that you're looking at on the floor are basically food containers. Continue our way back aft. We are now getting into the FGB. I'm sorry, we were FGB, now we're going into the service module. And you see Misha down there working on one of his apparatus, and you see that I think Krister was taking this. He's being met with Thomas on the high-def camera. We didn't have any time for luxury after taking a quick tour. Nick and Roman actually grappled the P5 truss, better known as Puny. They took it out of the bay, and they positioned it on the forward left side of the shuttle. And as you see their arm in motion, above it, you'll see the space station arm coming in. Sunny is now going in to grapple the P5. At one point, both arms were grappled. Once we had firm hold of it, we let go, and we had it.
As we said before, we did 4 spacewalks on this flight, and we had a lot of help getting into the hatch and getting ourselves ready. You can see Bill and LA there, and they'd actually close us off into the crew lock before each spacewalk, and then out we go on EVA-1, or the first spacewalk. The first spacewalk, the main objective was to install P5. You can see us coming out here. And then we go all the way out to the end of P4, approximately 100 or so feet. And then once we get out there, as you can see us all the way on the left, they move P5 up into position to be installed on P4. You have Joni and Sunny inside doing all the robotics work for this. And what they did was they brought it to about 20 centimeters, within about 20 centimeters of P4, and then let us take off the launch locks, and then actually moved it in closer. And you can see it now going into the soft dock mechanism. After that, you can see us actually, this is just before we installed it. We actually had to remove those launch locks. And then after we got it together, we tightened them down. You can see here how far out we are. We're actually inboard of where we put on P5. And then we had a little work to do outside on the other side of the truss. On the starboard side, we actually replaced a camera, the television camera group. Here you see Krister taking a picture of me with the camera. And then on the second spacewalk, we started our massive rewiring exercise. Like I said before, our main objective here was to actually take the space station off its temporary power system and move it to its permanent system. And basically, in layman's terms, what we were doing, we turned off half of the station, we unplugged it from P6, or the power truss that was vertical, and then plugged it into the main truss. Then we powered that side up, powered the other side down, and then we unplugged those 2 channels from P6, and then we plugged it into the main truss. And this was all orchestrated by Billy O. He was our intervehicular crew member. Basically, he was the brains, and we were just moving things around out there. You can see there's a lot of connectors, several dozen connectors that we had to do here. And also, to get to some of them, we actually had to move these 2 carts, which are the crew equipment translation aid carts, or the CETA carts. You can see right here is the CETA cart being held by Krister Fuglesang. And then he moves it from one side of the mobile base system to the other, and then connects the 2 CETA carts. Okay. And this is actually a picture of the guys inside that I'm taking here, of the 3, and you can see that picture in our greatest hits somewhere else. And then EVA-3 was more of the same connector stuff, but we also had to move some service module debris panels. This is actually Sunny on the end of the arm coming into the back of the payload bay. I'm already there loosening the bolts so she can take the service module debris panels and put them on something we called a Christmas tree, which was actually a support structure for them. And then off she goes on the arm, and Nick is actually flying her up and around the lab and all the way to the side of the station where there was a receptacle for the Christmas tree to go. And you can see that in this part. Then I translate down there to help her out and throw the lock, and that was it.
On flight day 5, we had a little short schedule to retract solar array. It was supposed to go for an hour. Well, it turned out it was a multi-day task. And here's one of the examples of how it looked after the first day. Didn't look pretty, but at least there was enough inside that the Sarge could start to turn. On EVA-3, Sunny and Beamer was kind of told to go up and shake the arrays a little bit, and here you have a nice view. 44 pounds, yeah. It helped a little bit. The array got somewhat further in, but it was still not enough. And towards the end of the EVA-3, we got the news that we will have a new EVA-4. Everyone was happy on board except the commander for the shuttle was a little bit concerned. And to prepare for that EVA, we had to make our own tools. And here is the one which Beamer is using. It was taped with Kapton to so we won't get a little electrical shock. And finally, after a lot of work by Beamer all over array, it's coming in.
Yes. Go on that can.
Final success. And the mission was more or less completed, and we could start to have some fun also. Actually, we had fun all the time, but we could enjoy this weightlessness, playing with things like frisbees, playing with ourselves. I combed your hair, so this must not be the morning. And the famous water experiment, and with a Swedish candy going inside. And that's one way to eat. You can feed each other. That's another way to eat. Or you can make a little frisbee to eat. And occasionally we even ate the normal way.
And we also found ways to eat together. We actually had a couple occasions to eat as an entire crew back in the back of the space station with our space station guests, or our hosts, I should say. Eventually, after all this hard work and good fun, it was time to say goodbye. Here's a picture of our farewell ceremony. A couple tearful goodbyes, and it was getting ready to close the hatch and perform the undocking. For the undocking, it's just the reverse of a docking, and you just make the station get smaller, and you just fly around. Krister took a few pictures. We had actually some tasks of pictures as we were flying around, and Krister and Beamer took care of those, and we got a half a lap fly around. So here you see us starting at the front, and we kind of go over the top, and then when we get around to the backside, we did a separation burn to set us up for our next task. The last thing we had to do was a couple, actually 3 deployables. You see 2 of them here, and then 1 going out the side. And some pictures of them. It was kind of neat to see these go out, and we were passing over some pretty neat parts of the Earth. Eventually, it was time to come home, and we got the orbiter all set to come back as the spaceship into an airplane that it is. We had Joni and Krister set up to close the payload bay doors, which you see them doing here. They did a marvelous job as they were actually closed, which was important coming in. And then we got in our suits and got ready for the entry. Beamer takes one last opportunity to eat there, as you can see is a theme. And then we turn it over to the boss for the final landing.
You can see why the pilot doesn't speak much. You know, folks were talking about how the mission was over a long time ago, and I had to keep reminding them that there was actually this minor thing called a landing that we had to perform. And after waving off the first rev, we weren't sure we were really going to go, and it was quite a pleasant surprise to find out that we're coming into the Kennedy Space Center. Great views from the cameras. You know, the shuttle is an amazing vehicle, and it really flies well, just like the training aircraft that we have. I was just amazed at how similar it was. So here we are at about 700 feet, 305 knots, and we're pulling towards the runway, having been in a big dive about 1.5 miles short of it. We get the landing gear down, and I just keep telling myself, it's just like a simulator, it's just like a simulator. No pressure. And right at sunset, it was just remarkable to actually fly this thing for the first time, bring it down. Billy O gets the drag chute out the back end. The derotation is a real eye-opener for people that weren't expecting it, because it is a bone-jarring crunch when the nose gear comes down. But that machine was the most marvelous thing, and you know, you read a lot of things in the press about it, but it is a phenomenal piece of engineering that did a job that no other vehicle could have done on this mission, and did us well for the 13-plus days that we were in orbit, and it was a true privilege to get this mission off.